Jake Morrison floated in his small research ship called the Wanderer and stared at the red warning lights that covered his control panel like angry eyes. The ship's engine had died 3 days ago with a sound like thunder, leaving him stuck in empty space between two distant stars. His oxygen meter showed only 18 hours of breathable air left, and the emergency beacon had been calling for help since the accident happened. But no human ships had answered. The Kepler system stretched around him like a vast, dark ocean filled with cold stars and floating rocks. Jake had been exploring this region alone, mapping new planets for the Earth colonies when his engine exploded without warning. The blast had damaged his communication system and destroyed his main power core, leaving him with only backup systems that barely kept him alive. Jake was 42 years old and had spent 20 years flying through space, but he had never felt so alone before. He checked his food supplies again and counted 3 nutrition bars and half a bottle of water. The cold was getting worse, too, because the heating system needed more power than his dying batteries could provide. His breath made small clouds in the air as he worked at his controls, trying for the 100th time to fix something that might save his life. He sent another distress signal into the empty darkness and waited. The silence that came back felt heavy and final. Jake knew that the nearest human outpost was 6 days away at full speed, and no rescue ship could reach him before his air ran out. He had made peace with dying alone in space, something that happened to explorers sometimes, but he still kept trying because giving up was not in his nature. On the 4th day, when his oxygen alarm started beeping and he had maybe 6 hours left to breathe, something appeared on his sensors. The object was moving fast toward his position, too fast to be a rock or a piece of space junk. Jake's heart started beating faster as he watched the sensor screen. The shape was wrong for a human ship, too smooth and curved like it had grown instead of being built. The alien vessel came close enough for Jake to see it through his window, and his mouth fell open in surprise. The ship looked like a giant sea creature made of metal and light, with no sharp edges or straight lines anywhere. It was beautiful in a way that made Jake forget about his fear for a moment. He had heard stories about alien ships from other explorers, but seeing one in person felt like a dream. The alien ship stopped next to the Wanderer, and Jake could see lights moving under its surface like blood in veins. His radio crackled with static, and then a voice spoke in perfect English, though it sounded different from any human voice he had ever heard. The words came out musical and soft, like water flowing over stones. "Human vessel, this is Captain Thyra Vell of the Zilani ship Gentle Current. We have received your distress signal. Do you require assistance?" Jake's hands shook as he reached for his radio. The Zilani were famous throughout human space for never helping other species and never getting involved in the problems of younger races. They were older than humans by millions of years and had technology that seemed like magic, but they kept to themselves and followed strict rules about not interfering with other civilizations. "This is Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Wanderer," he said into his radio. "My engine is dead and I'm running out of oxygen. I don't know why you're here, but yes, I need help very badly." There was a long pause, and Jake wondered if the alien captain was talking to her crew or maybe changing her mind about helping him. Finally, Thyra Vell spoke again, and Jake could hear something like sadness in her musical voice. "Commander Morrison, I must tell you that what I am about to do goes against the laws of my people. We are forbidden from helping younger species, but I cannot watch you die when I have the power to save you. Please prepare to receive assistance." A beam of blue light shot from the alien ship and wrapped around the Wanderer like gentle hands. Jake felt his ship move as the beam pulled him closer to the larger vessel. A tube of light connected the two ships, and Jake heard air hissing into his cabin as the Zilani shared their atmosphere with him. The oxygen meter on his control panel stopped its urgent beeping and began to climb toward safe levels. "Your immediate danger has passed," Thyra Vell said through the radio. "I am sending repair drones to fix your life support systems and give you enough power to reach the nearest human station. Please remain calm and do not resist the repair process. Jake watched through his windows as small flying machines emerged from the alien ship and began working on his damaged engine. They moved with impossible precision, their tools creating sparks of light as they welded and repaired. Within 2 hours, his ship was running better than it had in months. His oxygen system hummed with new efficiency, his heating came back online, and his engine started with a healthy roar. Your vessel is now capable of safe travel, Thyravel announced. I have uploaded navigation data to your computer that will guide you to human space. May you reach your destination safely. Jake stared at his instruments in amazement. Everything worked perfectly, better than before the accident. He tried to find words big enough to express his gratitude, but felt like a child trying to thank a god. Captain Thyravel, I don't know how to repay you for this. You saved my life when you didn't have to. What can I give you? How can I thank you properly? Compassion requires no payment, Commander Morrison, the alien captain replied. Perhaps someday you will help another traveler in need, and that will be thanks enough. We must part now before my superiors discover what I have done. The blue light faded, and the alien ship began to move away, but Jake called out desperately on his radio. Wait, will I ever see you again? Can we be friends? Thyravel's voice came back one last time, growing fainter as her ship moved into the distance. Remember only that kindness exists in dark places, Commander Morrison. That is friendship enough. The beautiful alien vessel disappeared into the star field, leaving Jake alone with his repaired ship and a debt of gratitude that felt heavier than gravity. 25 years had passed since Jake Morrison floated helplessly in space, and the scared explorer had become Admiral Morrison, the head of Earth's diplomatic corps. His office on Luna Station overlooked the blue curve of Earth, but Jake often found himself staring into deep space, remembering the alien ship that had saved his life. He had never forgotten Captain Thyravel or the kindness she had shown him when death seemed certain. Jake had spent decades learning everything he could about the Zalani civilization. He read every report, studied every encounter, and slowly built a picture of the mysterious species that had given him a second chance at life. The Zalani were ancient beyond human understanding, with technology that could reshape stars and wisdom gathered over millions of years. They lived on beautiful worlds scattered across their own region of space, and they followed strict laws about not interfering with younger species like humans. What Jake discovered about Thyravel's fate made his heart heavy with guilt and anger. The Zalani government had found out about her rescue of a human explorer, and they had punished her severely for breaking their most sacred law. She had been stripped of her captain's rank, expelled from the Zalani fleet, and exiled to a mining colony on the edge of their territory. The proud captain who had saved Jake's life now worked in dark tunnels, digging metals from asteroid rocks like a common laborer. The information had cost Jake favors and credits to obtain, gathered through careful questions to alien traders and diplomatic contacts. Most species avoided talking about the Zalani because they were powerful and dangerous when angered, but Jake persisted. He learned that Thyravel lived on Mining Station 7, a lonely outpost where exiled Zalani spent their remaining years in shame and isolation. Jake's research also revealed something that made his blood run cold. The Zalani homeworld, Zalara Prime, was dying slowly and quietly. A rare type of stellar radiation from their sun had been poisoning their atmosphere for over a century, turning their beautiful world into a place where children were born sick and old ones died struggling to breathe. The proud Zalani government had refused help from other species, choosing instead to relocate their people to colony worlds rather than admit they could not solve the problem alone. Their best scientists and engineers had tried everything they knew, but the poison in their air grew stronger each year. Zalara Prime, the ancient heart of their civilization, would be uninhabitable within 30 years. Billions of Zilani would lose their ancestral home because their pride would not let them ask for help from younger species they considered beneath them. Jake sat in his office late at night, reading reports about atmospheric poisoning and watching the stars through his window. The irony burned in his chest like acid. Thyra Vel had risked everything to save one human life, and now her entire species was facing a slow death because they could not bend their pride enough to accept assistance. The woman who had shown him compassion was mining rocks in exile while her homeworld suffocated. He began making calls to Earth's best scientists, starting with Dr. Lisa Carter, a terraforming specialist who had spent her career making dead worlds livable for human colonists. Lisa was 58 years old with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had transformed 12 worlds from airless rocks into garden planets where families could raise children under open skies. "Admiral, I've read your files about the Zilani atmospheric crisis," Lisa said during their video call. "The radiation poisoning is similar to what we dealt with on Mars 40 years ago, but on a much larger scale. It's not impossible to fix, just incredibly difficult and expensive." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Could we do it? Could human technology save their world?" Lisa was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Maybe. We'd need atmospheric processors working around the clock for years, plus biological agents to neutralize the toxins. It would require the biggest terraforming operation in human history, and we'd have to do it without their government's permission, because they'd never accept our help officially." The next person Jake called was Dr. Ryan Patterson, an atmospheric engineer who specialized in cleaning poisoned air. Ryan was younger than Lisa, only 42, but he had developed revolutionary scrubbing systems that could filter toxins from entire planetary atmospheres. His machines were working on 6 human worlds, slowly healing damage from industrial accidents and natural disasters. "The Zilani problem is fascinating," Ryan told Jake over their secure communication link. "Their atmosphere has 3 different types of radiation poison, each requiring a different approach to neutralize. I've run computer simulations, and it's theoretically possible to clean their air, but it would take enormous resources and perfect coordination." Jake felt hope building in his chest like a warm fire. "What would we need?" "At least 50 atmospheric processors, 200 biological seeding drones, and a delivery system that could deploy everything without being detected by Zilani sensors," Ryan replied. "Plus, we'd need botanical specialists to develop plants that could survive in their environment while filtering out the toxins." The third call went to Captain Helen Rodriguez of the science vessel Aurora. Helen was 45 years old and had spent 20 years commanding research ships in dangerous regions of space. Her vessel was equipped with the most advanced stealth technology in the human fleet, capable of moving unseen through hostile territory. "Jake, this is the craziest plan I've ever heard," Helen said after he explained what he wanted to do. "Sneaking into Zilani space without permission, deploying terraforming equipment on their homeworld, and doing it all in secret so they never know we helped them. If we're caught, it could start a war." "I know the risks," Jake replied. "But I can't let their world die when we have the technology to save it. One of their people risked everything to save my life. Now it's our turn to help them, even if they never know we did it." Helen was quiet for a long time, and Jake could almost hear her thinking through the communication system. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was firm with decision. "Count me in, Admiral. The Aurora can carry everything we need, and my crew won't ask questions if I tell them this mission is classified. But we'll need more than just the 4 of us to pull this off." Jake spent the next 6 months assembling his secret team. Dr. Kevin Brooks joined them as their botanical specialist. Kevin was 38 years old and had developed plant species that could survive in the harshest environments while cleaning the air around them. His bioengineered trees and grasses had turned 3 desert worlds into green paradises. Amanda Bell became their chief engineer. She was 41 years old and had designed the atmospheric scrubbers currently working on Luna and Mars. Amanda's machines could process millions of tons of air per day, removing toxins and replacing them with clean oxygen and nitrogen. The team met in secret locations, planning every detail of their impossible mission. They studied Zilani patrol routes, analyzed their homeworld's atmospheric composition, and designed equipment that could work undetected for years. Jake felt like a young explorer again, planning a journey into unknown space. Except this time, he was not alone, and he was not running toward discovery, but toward redemption. "We'll call it Operation Quiet Garden," Jake announced to his team during their final planning meeting. "We're going to heal their world without them knowing we were ever there, and we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do." Lisa Carter smiled and raised her coffee cup in a toast. "To anonymous angels," she said. The others raised their cups and repeated the words. "To anonymous angels." The Aurora moved through space like a ghost, its stealth systems bending light and radio waves around the ship's hull until it became invisible to most sensors. Captain Helen Rodriguez sat in her command chair, watching the navigation display, as they approached the edge of Zilani territory. Behind her, Admiral Jake Morrison stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the main screen where Zalara Prime appeared as a small blue dot, growing larger with each passing hour. Entering. "Zilani space in 10 minutes, Helen announced to her bridge crew. "All departments report ready for silent running." The Aurora carried the most advanced stealth technology that human engineers had ever built, but Jake still felt nervous about entering the territory of a species that could destroy human civilization if they chose to do so. The Zilani were peaceful by nature, but they were also incredibly powerful, and they did not appreciate uninvited visitors to their space. In the ship's main laboratory, Dr. Lisa Carter and her team worked on the final preparations for their atmospheric processors. The machines were the size of small buildings, each one capable of cleaning millions of cubic meters of poisoned air every day. Lisa had modified them to work with the specific toxins found in Zalara Prime's atmosphere, and she had programmed them to operate automatically for 20 years without maintenance. "The processors are ready for deployment," Lisa reported to Jake over the ship's communication system. "Each unit will burrow into the ground and extend filtration routes throughout the surrounding area. They'll look like natural rock formations. To casual observation, but they'll be working day and night to clean the air." Dr. Ryan Patterson was in the engineering section, making final adjustments to his atmospheric scrubbing drones. The small flying machines were designed to work in the upper atmosphere, where they would capture radiation particles and neutralize them before they could fall to the ground as poison rain. Ryan had built 200 of the drones, each one programmed to work for a decade before burning up in the planet's atmosphere like tiny shooting stars. "My drones are loaded with neutralizing agents and ready for launch," Ryan told Jake. "They'll spread across the entire planet within 48 hours and begin immediate decontamination of the upper atmosphere. The effect should be noticeable within 6 months. Dr. Kevin Brooks had spent months developing plant species that could survive in Zalara Prime's toxic environment while actively cleaning the soil and air around them. His laboratory was filled with seedlings and genetic modification equipment, and he had created 12 different types of plants that would work together to heal the poisoned world. "The biological agents are ready for seeding," Kevin reported. "My plants will grow quickly in Zilani soil and begin producing clean oxygen within weeks. They're designed to spread naturally but not become invasive. In 10 years, they'll cover most of the planet's landmass." Amanda Bell worked in the ship's cargo bay, supervising the loading of her massive atmospheric scrubbers into deployment pods. Her machines were designed to work on the planet's surface, drawing in poisoned air and releasing it clean and fresh. Amanda had built 50 of the scrubbers, each one disguised to look like a natural geological formation. "All surface units are loaded and ready," Amanda announced. "They'll deploy automatically once they reach the surface and begin operation immediately. The scrubbers are programmed to work together as a planetary network, sharing data and coordinating their cleaning efforts." Jake moved through the ship, checking on each team member and reviewing their plans one final time. The mission required perfect timing and coordination. They would have only 3 days on Zalara Prime before the next Zalani patrol arrived, and they needed to deploy all their equipment without being detected by the planet's monitoring systems. "Remember, we're not just healing a world," Jake told his team during their final briefing. "We're repaying a debt of kindness that's 25 years old. Captain Theravel saved my life when she didn't have to, and now we're going to save her world the same way." The Aurora entered Zalara Prime's atmosphere during the planet's longest night, when both moons were dark and the Zalani settlements were quiet. Helen piloted the ship with incredible skill, using the planet's magnetic fields to mask their approach and landing in a remote mountain region where no Zalani lived. "We're down," Helen announced. "Beginning deployment immediately." The ship's cargo doors opened and the deployment began. Robotic systems launched Amanda's atmospheric scrubbers toward their designated positions across the planet's surface. The machines fell through the dark sky like meteors, their protective shells burning away to reveal the cleaning equipment inside. Each scrubber landed with a soft thud and immediately began burrowing into the ground, disguising itself as a natural rock formation. Lisa's atmospheric processors followed next, deployed by precision drop pods that carried them to strategic locations around the planet. The processors were larger and required more careful placement, but Lisa had calculated the optimal positions for maximum effectiveness. Within 4 hours, all 50 processors were in position and beginning their work. Ryan's drones launched from the Aurora's upper decks, spreading across the sky like a swarm of metal insects. The small machines climbed toward the upper atmosphere, where they would spend the next decade capturing radiation particles and neutralizing them before they could fall as poison rain. Ryan watched his creations disappear into the darkness and felt proud of what they would accomplish. Kevin's biological seeding came last. Thousands of seed pods scattered across the planet's surface, each one containing plants genetically modified to thrive in the toxic environment. The seeds would grow quickly in Zalani soil, spreading naturally to cover vast areas while cleaning the air and ground around them. "All systems deployed and operational," Lisa reported after 6 hours of continuous work. "Atmospheric improvement should begin immediately and accelerate over the next several months." Jake stood at the Aurora's observation window, looking out at the poisoned landscape of Zalara Prime. The planet had once been beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents, but decades of atmospheric poisoning had turned the sky a sickly yellow color and killed most of the native plant life. Soon, if their plan worked, the world would begin healing itself. "Phase 1 complete," Helen announced from the bridge. "All equipment deployed successfully. Recommend immediate departure before the next Zalani patrol arrives." But as the Aurora prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. A lone Zalani worker approached their landing site, moving slowly across the rocky ground on foot. Jake's heart stopped as he recognized the figure through the ship's external cameras. It was Theravel, older and thinner than he remembered, wearing the simple clothes of a mining worker instead of a captain's uniform. She had been working the night shift at a nearby mining station and had noticed the unusual activity in the mountains. Instead of reporting it to the authorities, she had come to investigate alone. Jake watched through the cameras as Theravel examined one of Amanda's atmospheric scrubbers, which had disguised itself as a natural rock formation. The former captain ran her hands over the machine's surface, and Jake could see the moment when she realized what it really was. Her body language changed from curiosity to understanding to something that looked like hope. Theravel looked directly at the Aurora's hidden position, though Jake knew she could not see through their stealth systems. For a long moment, the exile stood motionless in the poisoned landscape, surrounded by the machines that would heal her dying world. Then she did something that made Jake's eyes fill with tears. She placed her hand over her heart in the traditional Zalani gesture of gratitude and bowed deeply toward the invisible human ship. When she straightened, Jake could see that she was smiling for the first time in 25 years. She knows, Jake whispered to Helen, who had joined him at the observation. Window, she knows and she's not going to tell anyone, Helen replied. She's going to let us save her world in secret just like she saved you all those years ago. Thyravel walked back toward her mining station, leaving the atmospheric scrubber to continue its work. As the Aurora lifted off and departed Zalara, Prime, Jake knew that their mission was more than just repaying a debt. It was proof that kindness, once given, never truly dies but grows and spreads like seeds in fertile ground. 2 years had passed since the Aurora left Zalara Prime, and the changes were beyond anything Jake Morrison had dared to hope for. From his office on Luna Station, he read the intelligence reports that came through official diplomatic channels, and smiled at each piece of good news. The Zalani homeworld was healing faster than even Dr. Lisa Carter's most optimistic projections had predicted. The atmospheric processors were working perfectly, buried deep in the planet's crust, like mechanical roots that cleaned poison from the air 24 hours a day. Lisa's calculations had been conservative, and the machines were actually processing 30% more contaminated air than expected. The toxin levels in Zalara Prime's atmosphere had dropped by 60% in just 2 years, a change that should have taken decades with Zalani technology alone. Ryan Patterson's atmospheric scrubbing drones had exceeded all expectations as well. The small machines worked tirelessly in the upper atmosphere, capturing radiation particles before they could fall to the surface as poisonous rain. Weather stations across Zalara Prime reported the cleanest precipitation in over a century, and children who had never seen truly clear skies were pointing at blue patches appearing between the yellow clouds. Kevin Brooks's biological agents had transformed vast areas of dead landscape into green gardens that grew more beautiful each month. His genetically modified plants thrived in conditions that would have killed normal vegetation, and they spread naturally across the continents while actively cleaning the soil and air around them. Zalani agricultural reports mentioned mysterious, new plant species that seemed to appear from nowhere but brought life back to areas that had been barren for generations. Amanda Bell's surface-based atmospheric scrubbers continued their work disguised as natural rock formations, and not a single one had been discovered by Zalani investigators. The machines drew in poisoned air through hidden vents and released it clean and fresh, creating pockets of pure atmosphere that expanded outward like ripples in a pond. The Zalani government was completely baffled by the improvements to their world. Their finest scientists studied the changes but could not explain them. Some theorized that the stellar radiation affecting their planet had naturally decreased, while others suggested that their own atmospheric processors had finally achieved a breakthrough in efficiency. A few whispered about divine intervention, or ancient planetary healing systems that had somehow activated themselves. High Counselor Zeth Ka, the most traditional leader in Zalani government, issued official statements crediting their own technology and the wisdom of their ancestors for the miraculous recovery. He refused to consider that outside forces might be involved, because accepting help from younger species would violate everything the Zalani believed about their place in the universe. Meanwhile, Thyravel continued her work at Mining Station 7. But her duties had changed in an interesting way. The station's administrators had promoted her from ordinary mining work to environmental monitoring, a position that required her to travel across the region and check on atmospheric conditions. This new job gave her the perfect opportunity to visit the sites where human equipment was working and ensure that nothing interfered with their operation. She never reported the atmospheric processors or scrubbers to her superiors, and she carefully disabled monitoring equipment that might detect them. When other mining workers asked about the strange rock formations that seemed to purify the air around them, Thyravel would smile and suggest that perhaps the mountains themselves were healing their world through natural processes that science did not yet understand. Jake received regular updates about Thyravel through his intelligence network, and he was pleased to learn that her life had improved along with her planet's atmosphere. The former captain had been given better living quarters and more respect from her fellow exiles. Some younger Zilani had even begun asking her to tell stories about her years in the fleet, treating her more like a retired hero than a disgraced criminal. The most encouraging reports came from Zilani medical facilities, where doctors were struggling to understand why their patients were getting healthier so quickly. Children born with radiation poisoning were recovering at impossible rates, their damaged organs healing themselves as the air they breathed became cleaner each day. Elderly Zilani who had suffered from breathing problems for decades were experiencing relief they had not felt since their youth. Dr. Lisa Carter visited Jake's office to review the latest atmospheric readings from Zalara Prime, and her face glowed with satisfaction as she spread the data across his desk. "Look at these numbers, Jake," she said, pointing at charts that showed steadily improving air quality. "The toxin levels are dropping even faster than we hoped. At this rate, Zalara Prime will have completely clean air within 3 more years, instead of the 10 we originally estimated." "How is that possible?" Jake asked, studying the charts with amazement. "The biological agents are working better than Kevin expected," Lisa explained. "His plants are not just cleaning the air, they're also producing some kind of catalyst that makes our atmospheric processors more efficient. It's like the planet's ecosystem is actively helping us heal it." Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest as he looked at the data. Somewhere in Zilani space, the world that had produced Captain Thiravel was coming back to life, and no one except his small team knew that humans were responsible for the miracle. The reports also mentioned increasing hope among the Zilani population. Young couples who had postponed having children because of the poisoned atmosphere were starting families again. Artists were creating works that celebrated life and growth instead of mourning their dying world. Scientists who had given up research into atmospheric healing were returning to their laboratories with renewed enthusiasm. Captain Helen Rodriguez contacted Jake through secure communication to report on the Aurora's latest supply mission to Zalara Prime. The science vessel had made 3 secret trips to the planet, delivering replacement parts and additional equipment to ensure the atmospheric healing systems continued working at peak efficiency. "The stealth missions are getting easier," Helen told Jake during their video conference. "Zilani patrol schedules are more relaxed now that their government believes the crisis is over. They've actually reduced security in the system because they think their world is safe." "Any sign that they suspect outside involvement?" Jake asked. Helen shook her head. "None at all. High Counselor Zeth Ka gave another speech last week, taking credit for the atmospheric recovery and praising Zilani's scientific superiority. They're so convinced they solved the problem themselves that they're not looking for any other explanation." Jake smiled at the irony. The Zilani were so proud that they could not imagine accepting help from a younger species, which made it easier for humans to help them in secret. Their arrogance had become the perfect cover for Operation Quiet Garden. The most touching report came from Dr. Kevin Brooks, who had been monitoring the spread of his biological agents across Zalara Prime's surface. His plants were not just cleaning the planet's atmosphere, they were also creating beautiful gardens in places where nothing had grown for decades. "Jake, you should see the satellite images," Kevin said during their monthly briefing. "There are flowers blooming in areas that have been dead wasteland for 50 years. The Zilani are building parks around some of the largest plant colonies, and families are bringing their children to play in gardens that appeared like magic." Jake looked at the images Kevin had gathered from various sources, and he felt tears in his eyes as he saw Zilani children running through fields of colorful flowers that had grown from human-engineered seeds. The children would never know that their playground had been created by the same species their government considered primitive and inferior. "We're not just healing their world," Jake said quietly. "We're giving them back their future." As the 3rd year of Operation Quiet Garden began, Jake received a special intelligence report that made him smile wider than he had in months. Thiravel had been quietly promoted again, this time to Regional Environmental Coordinator, a position that gave her authority over atmospheric monitoring for an entire continent. Her superiors credited her with exceptional insight into natural healing processes, never suspecting that she was actually protecting human technology from discovery. The former captain now lived in comfortable quarters near the capital city of Zalara Prime, where she could see the blue skies that had returned to her homeworld. According to intelligence reports, she spent her evenings walking through the new gardens and breathing air that was cleaner than it had been in her entire lifetime. Jake knew that Thyra Vell understood exactly who was responsible for her world's miraculous recovery, and he knew that she would never reveal the truth to her people. She was keeping the secret not because she had to, but because she wanted to, allowing humans to remain anonymous angels who asked for nothing in return for their gift of life. 3 months after Jake Morrison's secret mission had completely restored Zalara Prime's atmosphere, the entire Zalani civilization was celebrating what their leaders called the Great Healing. Children played under blue skies that their grandparents had never seen, and artists created magnificent works celebrating their world's return to life. The government had declared a planet-wide festival that would last for 1 full year, honoring what they believed was their own scientific achievement in saving their homeworld. High Counselor Zeth Ka stood before the Zalani High Council in their ancient chamber, carved from living crystal that sparkled with natural light. His voice echoed through the hall as he spoke about Zalani's superiority and the triumph of their advanced civilization over the forces that had threatened their world. "We have proven once again that the Zalani people need no assistance from younger species," Zeth Ka declared to the assembled counselors. "Our scientists and engineers have accomplished what others thought impossible, cleansing our atmosphere through the power of our technology and the wisdom of our ancestors." The other counselors nodded in agreement, their faces showing pride and satisfaction. They had lived through decades of slow despair as their world died around them, and now they basked in the glory of what they believed was their own salvation. Not one of them suspected that their recovery had come from the hands of the primitive humans they had always dismissed as inferior. But in a small apartment near the capital city, Thyra Vell sat at her window and watched children playing in gardens that had grown from human-engineered seeds. She had kept the secret of Operation Quiet Garden for 3 years, protecting the atmospheric processors and scrubbers from discovery while watching her world come back to life. The weight of her knowledge had grown heavier each day, especially as she listened to her leaders take credit for miracles they had not performed. Thyra Vell was now 68 years old, with silver hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years spent in exile and hard labor. But her body was straight and her mind was sharp, and she had reached a decision that would shake Zalani civilization to its foundations. She could no longer remain silent while her people celebrated a lie and ignored the truth about who had actually saved their world. She requested an audience with the High Council, using her position as Regional Environmental Coordinator to gain access to the Crystal Chamber, where the most powerful Zalani made decisions that affected billions of lives. The counselors agreed to see her because her reports about atmospheric conditions had been remarkably accurate during the Great Healing, and they wanted to honor her for her service. Thyra Vell entered the council chamber wearing her simple coordinator's uniform instead of the elaborate robes that visiting dignitaries usually wore. She walked slowly to the center of the room, where a crystal platform awaited speakers, and looked up at the 12 counselors who sat in their ancient seats of power. "Honored counselors," she began, her voice clear and strong despite her age. "I come before you with information about the great healing that you must hear, though it may be difficult to accept." High Counselor Zeth Ka leaned forward in his seat, his expression showing mild curiosity mixed with impatience. "Speak quickly, Coordinator," he said. "We have many celebrations to attend, and little time for lengthy reports about atmospheric conditions." Thyra Vell took a deep breath and prepared to destroy everything her people believed about their recent salvation. "The great healing was not accomplished by Zalani technology," she said. her words falling into the chamber like stones into still water. Our world was saved by humans, working in secret to repay a debt of kindness that was 25 years old. The silence that followed her statement was so complete that Thyravel could hear her own heartbeat echoing in the crystal walls. The 12 counselors stared at her with expressions of shock, disbelief, and growing anger. "That is impossible," Zethka said, his voice sharp with outrage. "Humans are a primitive species barely capable of interstellar travel. They could never accomplish what our finest scientists achieved." Thyravel reached into her coordinator's bag and pulled out a collection of sensor readings, photographs, and technical specifications that she had gathered during her 3 years of protecting human equipment from discovery. "I have documented evidence of 57 human atmospheric processors, 200 atmospheric scrubbing drones, and 43 surface-based air purification systems currently operating on our world," she said, spreading the evidence across the crystal platform. "I have also identified 12 species of genetically modified plants that were introduced to our ecosystem by human biological agents." The counselors leaned forward to examine her evidence, their faces showing increasing amazement and horror as they realized she was telling the truth. The technical specifications were clearly human in origin, using design principles and materials that no Zilani engineer would ever consider. "How do you know this?" asked Counselor Lyraven, her voice trembling with shock. Thyravel straightened her shoulders and prepared to reveal the secret she had carried for 28 years. "Because 25 years ago, I violated our laws and saved the life of a human explorer named Jake Morrison," she said. 3 years ago, that same human led a secret mission to heal our world, risking war between our species to repay the kindness I had shown him. The chamber erupted in chaos as the counselors began shouting questions and accusations. High Counselor Zethka's face turned dark with rage as he realized that not only had their world been saved by humans, but the rescue had been orchestrated by the same exile he had personally ordered punished for helping a primitive alien. "Silence!" Zethka roared, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. "Thyravel, you stand accused of treason against our people and violation of our most sacred laws. Your actions have brought shame upon our entire civilization." But Thyravel was no longer the frightened captain who had been court-martialed decades earlier. She had spent years in exile thinking about honor and compassion, watching her world die while her government's pride prevented them from seeking help. She stood straight and faced the counselors without fear. "I stand accused of saving lives," she replied firmly. "First the life of one human explorer, and then the lives of every Zilani on this world. If that is treason, then I am proud to be a traitor." The arguments continued for hours as the counselors struggled to understand the implications of Thyravel's revelation. Their entire worldview had been built on the assumption that Zilani were superior to all other species, especially humans. Accepting that they owed their survival to primitive aliens would require them to reconsider everything they believed about themselves and their place in the universe. Finally, Counselor Lyraven, who was younger and more flexible than her colleagues, asked the question that would change Zilani civilization forever. "If what you say is true," she said to Thyravel, "then why did the humans save us? What did they want in return for healing our world?" Thyravel smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, remembering Jake Morrison's words from long ago and the anonymous kindness that had followed. "They wanted nothing," she replied. "No payment, no diplomatic advantage, no recognition for their achievement. They healed our world because I once helped one of them when he was dying in space, and humans never forget kindness, no matter how small." The chamber fell silent again as the counselors absorbed this information. The idea that an entire species would risk everything to help strangers, expecting nothing in return, was beyond their understanding. High Counselor Zethka stood slowly. From his ancient seat, his face showing the strain of having his deepest beliefs challenged and destroyed in a single afternoon. "If this is true," he said quietly, "then we have been blind fools, and our pride has nearly cost us everything. These humans showed us more honor than we have ever shown them." Over the following weeks, as Zilani investigators confirmed every detail of Thyravel's testimony, the government faced the most difficult decision in their species' history. They could continue pretending that they had saved themselves, or they could acknowledge the truth and thank the species that had given them back their world. The debate raged for months, but eventually wisdom prevailed over pride. The Zilani opened official diplomatic relations with humanity for the first time in their civilization's history. Thyravel was not only pardoned for her ancient crime, but was appointed as the first Zilani ambassador to Earth, a position created specifically to honor the woman whose compassion had started everything. Jake Morrison stood in the observation lounge of the new human Zilani research station, looking out at the stars while Thyravel stood beside him. Both were older now, with gray hair and lines in their faces, but they had lived to see their species become allies and friends. "Admiral Morrison," Thyravel said, using the formal title she insisted on despite their friendship, "I must ask you something that has troubled me for years. Why did your people risk so much for us? Why did you spend your resources and endanger your ships to save a world that belonged to strangers?" Jake smiled and looked out at the beautiful blue planet that hung in space before them, its atmosphere clean and clear thanks to human technology that would never be removed.